Hello there. Me and my whiteboard were having a moment. Should I speak to my lecturer about my ADHD? It's a question I get asked a lot, and I have a really clear opinion about it. But before you hear my opinion, you should watch the disclaimer on my YouTube channel. And also check out this other video where I talk about why I think it's important that ADHD is defined as a disability. So, ADHD is defined as a disability, and because it is a disability, I believe you should ask for additional help and supports as you need in order to succeed at university. Uni is harder for students with ADHD than neurotypical students, and so I think you have every right to ask for some extra help. In fact, most unis agree with me. They have a program at every university I've ever worked at or heard of called a disability access scheme or an education access scheme or something along those lines. Access is usually in there. Sometimes they say plan rather than scheme. At my university, Swinburne, they call it getting an education access plan. There's a dedicated team of people at the university whose job it is to help those with a disability access their education in a way that is equitable to every reasonable extent possible. And those people usually have something along the lines of access in the title of their job. But if you don't know what they're called at your uni, step one would be to Google your university's name and the word disability and see what comes up. So once you are able to contact your disability office, accessibility team, whatever they call themselves, you'll need to provide evidence of your diagnosis, and the kinds of evidence that you provide would be different from one university to another. Sometimes you have a meeting with a qualified counsellor, and then a combination of the report that they give as well as any other medical documentation you have provides the sort of official diagnosis. Other times you just send in paperwork from your existing team of healthcare providers. Sometimes there might be a pathway that's a combination of those things. And once you have registered and had your disability recognised by the university, which is not super difficult if you have a diagnosis, then you will usually be assigned somebody who you can communicate with at the access team, and they and you together will come up with a plan for your educational needs, and then that plan becomes a formal document that can get communicated to all of the conveners of the units that you undertake. Conveners sometimes go by other names, but they are the academic person who's in charge of the unit. So sometimes they're the lecturer or professor in charge of the unit. Sometimes they're not a lecturer, but they're usually an academic staff member. So the convener then gets your education access plan and they review it. And in it, there will be details like if you are likely to require extensions for assignments and how long those extensions might be under normal circumstances, whether you might require a quiet room to take an exam in that doesn't have other students in it, if you might need more time for exams than other students, or other kinds of concessions that might make these kinds of environments more neuroaffirming and neuro-friendly. And your access officer and you who come up with this plan together, they have lots of experience of working with neurodivergent students and students with all kinds of disabilities, and they'll be likely to make suggestions along the lines of what they know has worked for other students and what they know that the university has provided before in terms of accommodations. So by the time your unit convener receives this information, it's usually been sort of distilled down to something that's pretty familiar to them. They will have likely seen something like it before. They will have experience with having provided these kinds of concessions before, and they will be able to work really well within what the plan suggests. Or in some rare cases, they might be teaching a unit where it's just not really feasible or reasonable. Reasonable is the wording under the Disability Act in Australia. So if you have a disability, your university or workplace is required by the Act to do everything reasonable to facilitate you to participate fully as a student or in that workplace. So in some courses of study, what is reasonable is really tricky. So it might be the case that you're doing a unit of study where attendance to every class is really, really important to the outcomes of the unit because there are assessment items that are in every single class. So where your uni might not require you normally to attend every class, in this unit it is a requirement, and that's a really difficult thing for the unit convener to waive even if they get an education access plan that says that that's one of the requests. So if they can't accommodate all the requests in the plan, they would then communicate to your access officer, and they and the officer would have a chat about what likely requests they could accommodate, and then they'll come back to you. Usually the access officer will come back to you, but it does differ from one uni to another, and then they'll have a conversation with you about what might work. What's really cool about this process is that you only have to prove your disability one time. So once you've proven it, you may have to re-register each year, but it's very unusual to have to resupply any of the paperwork that you did. Whereas if you don't do this and then you contact your lecturer in week 10 of semester and say, hey, I have ADHD and I've been unable to come to class because I've been really overwhelmed and scattered and really down about it all, and then that has kind of snowballed. Can I have an extension? In order to grant that extension, the policy at most unis would be that they have to get you to prove your ADHD. And then for you to do that every semester, potentially in multiple different units, means that you're doing a lot of paperwork. So if you go to these guys, your disability support team, whatever they're called at your university, they will help you to do that paperwork one time. They will then handle the communication with all of your teachers. Your conveners will send it down the line to people like your classroom teachers and tutors if they think that it's necessary, and then they will centrally manage any requests that come back from the conveners that say, hey, we can't really do this, but could we do this instead? Or if you need more than what's in your education access plan because of some other circumstance that's happened, then you go to your access officer and then they make those requests to all of your teachers at once. So it really simplifies all the paperwork that you have to do. And that's super good for an ADHD brain where these kinds of executive function challenges can be really, really tricky. So my next hot tip for you is do it at the start of your first year of study. Don't leave it till 4 weeks into semester. By that stage, you might be so busy with coursework, or you might have forgotten about it if you're like me, and it may not be front of mind for you to do it. So do this process as soon as you enroll at your university. Find out who these people are and how they can help you, and get the paperwork happening. My next tip for you is be proactive about communicating with your lecturers. I'm not suggesting that you should send them a really long message or bail them up at the end of class and want to have a 20-minute chat with them about the history of your ADHD, but they would super benefit from an email, 1 or 2 lines. Hey, did you receive my education access plan? My name is so-and-such. I'm in the 2:30 Wednesday class for this unit. Make sure you tell them what class and unit you're in. They have lots of those. And I have an education access plan relating to my diagnosis. You don't even have to tell them what your diagnosis is. They don't find out from this. This doesn't tell them. It says this student has a medical condition that, requires them to have the following blah, 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 or this student has a diagnosis that affects them in the following ways. And then it talks about the symptoms that are relevant to study. So like difficulty with attendance might be one of them. So your lecturer convener might not know what your diagnosis is, and they don't have to know in order to provide you with assistance. It's not required by the Disability Act. So send them your 1 or 2 line email at the start of semester so they know that you're there, you're proactive, you're trying really hard with your studies, and you need additional supports. They will file it away and go, if you have any specific requests around assignments, let me know later in semester, and then you do that. Next hot tip. Ask early when you need an extension or particular help with an upcoming assessment particularly, right? Also, if you need help with attending class or you're having some issues around that related to your ADHD, if you ask after a deadline has passed, some universities in some courses, they're not actually allowed to give you additional help. You have to ask before the deadline. So if you haven't already watched my video about how to get all your university deadlines automated into your calendar, you should do that now and download Google Calendar app for your phone. Ask for your assistance before deadlines for assignments and assessments have passed. I kind of think this one's the most important. My last tip is don't hide. Don't let your ADHD be a reason why you slowly disappear off your educator's radar and stop coming to class and stop handing in assignments and don't succeed ultimately in your studies. Be proud of who you are. ADHD is not just a set of things that you struggle with. It's also the ability to make connections when you're thinking that neurotypical brains can't make. It is heightened creativity. It's heightened enthusiasm and energy around things that really, really light you up. It's your ability to inspire other classmates and other people that you're around. These are amazing traits that come along with ADHD, as well as all the stuff we struggle with. And these traits shouldn't be hidden from your educators or your classmates. So please make yourself known, get the help that you need, and enjoy your studies.